Hey everyone, this is Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net. And I used to work at Disneyland. I actually worked there for like almost 4 years, and I want to say up front, I definitely loved the job. So much so that I have tried and failed several times to get another job, even just part-time, working for them again. So that's how much I love working there. But when it comes to their pay, Disney's got a long way to go, and a new report has come out that definitely shed some light into the plight of the cast member and why Anaheim specifically has such poverty around the Magic Kingdom. According to this article with KTLA, 10% of Disneyland employees have been homeless in the past 2 years. Union-funded wage report finds. Disneyland is known as the happiest place on earth, but for many employed at the theme park, that's not translating to a high quality of life, according to a newly released report based on union-funded surveys of Disneyland Resort employees. Now, of course, that means we do have to at least acknowledge up front these reports are done by the union, and the union is, I think, getting ready for another tough negotiating deal with Disney for raises and benefits and stuff like that. So we must take everything with a little grain of salt. But that said, again, it's not a good report. So, some are struggling to cover basic living expenses, with more than 10% of employees at the Anaheim Resort telling researchers they have been homeless at some point in the past 2 years. Of those who can afford housing, over half say they worry about being evicted from their residence. Additionally, 68% reported not having reliable access to sufficient quantities of food, and many end up eating just one meal a day. And in terms of the food, I can actually say that is actually true, to the point where, like, I actually was so scarce on food sometimes that I would make a sandwich and cut it up into 3 parts and cut up an apple into several slices, and I would just kind of snack on it throughout the days. I wouldn't actually have a meal. I would just snack on it. So, a number of workers also said they couldn't afford health care or dental costs, including 36% who have had to give up other necessities just to pay for monthly premiums of the resort's health insurance plan. Now, this is the one part of the report that I am personally a little because I loved my health benefits with Disney. I had a good plan, and it was not unreasonable. And when I had to go to the doctors, which unfortunately was a lot near the end of my tenure there, it was very reasonably priced. It was like $10 an appointment. Most medications were $20. So the benefits were actually really what was keeping the pay balance out. And I just want to say that up front because I'm going to be critical of Disney's payment, but the benefits, I think, were truly a lifesaver for me and many people who work there. On top of that, extra long commutes and ever-changing work schedules make it difficult for employees known in the company as cast members to find a second job that could help ease their financial hardships. And that is true. If you are what they call casual regular, and that's a fancy way of saying part-time, your schedule moves around, it's not consistent. If you're full-time, you have consistent hours. You know what you're going to be working because you, as they say, pick your line. And they have that term because, they have the schedules there and there's a line, and you look at the schedule I want this one, and they give it to you and they cross it off. And so no one can pick it after you. So if you're full-time, then you're probably good. But, if you want to find another job, you can. You know what your schedule's going to be. On the other hand, if you're a casual regular, yeah, it jumps around a lot based on the whims of Disney management. So that is very frustrating, to be sure. Those are just some of the staggering findings in the 125-page report titled Working for the Mouse, which was put out by researchers at Occidental College and the Economic Roundtable and commissioned by a coalition of unions representing workers at Disneyland Resort. It should be noted that the unions didn't themselves make this report, but they did hire someone to do it. The vast majority of respondents say that they were being paid less than $15 an hour, and about 3/4 of the approximately 5,000 surveyed said they run out of money by the end of the month, according to the survey, and Disneyland employs a heck of a lot more than 5,000 employees. The report suggests raising the wage floor to $20 an hour, noting that the average hourly wage in real dollars dropped 15% since 2000 from $15.80 to $13.36. And I agree with that, especially when you consider how much money Disney makes. $20 an hour for all of their cast members, part-time, full-time, that actually would not hurt them too much. As And we've got numbers as we're going to find out. Disney officials, however, dispute the findings as deliberately distorted, calling them an inaccurate and unscientific survey paid for by politically motivated labor unions, according to a statement from spokeswoman Susie Brown. And, in all fairness, I agree. If it was commissioned by the union, obviously they're going to use it in their negotiations if it supports their claims. If it doesn't support their claims, they probably won't bring it up at all. The report does not reflect how the overwhelming majority of our 30,000 cast members feel about the company. Brown told the Orange County Register that the average wage last year for full-time hourly workers was about $37,000, including any tips. Okay, yeah, I'm definitely going to comment on that. First of all, I know the yearly hourly wage was not $37,000 a year. Heck, it wasn't for me. Maybe it is for some. If you include the taxes that are taken out. But once you take out the taxes, then that's nowhere near that number. And also, in terms of tips, you're not allowed to tip your cast members unless you're in a very specific location. In fact, the only way a cast member can accept a tip at Disneyland or California Adventure or any of the parks is if you offer it to them 3 times. So you say, take a tip. They have to say, no, thank you. Take the tip. No, thank you. Take the tip. No, thank you. Take the tip. Okay. That's how you tip a cast member. And most people are not going to jump through those hoops or even know that it exists. So, you know what? Yeah, the tips are like, the Blue Bayou or Club 33 or, some of the fancy restaurants in Walt Disney World. So there's not a lot of cast members getting tips, and they are nowhere near making $37,000. While we recognize that social economic challenges exist for many people living in Southern California, we take pride in our employment experience, she said in the statement. Yes, but Disney has made statements acknowledging that cost of living has gone up too much. They have pushed for things to be cheaper in Orange County because it hurts their cast members and they don't want to pay the bill themselves. In fact, economic hardships aside, most of the employees, about 80%, express satisfaction with the work itself, saying they are proud of what they do at the resort, according to the survey. And I agree with that because, again, I was very happy working there and I was proud of the work I did. When you can make guests feel really good and everyone's like on that same level, sometimes you get people and it's like they're just really, really grateful. And I got some wonderful experiences because I gave great guest service. And in fact, when I look back, I probably should have taken more advantage of some of the connections I made by working there, and who knows where my life would have been. The bleak picture of homelessness and food insecurity, along with stories of employees struggling to get by, serves in stark contrast to the resort's prosperity. As real wages steadily declined over the past decade, overall revenue for Disneyland increased dramatically during the same period, according to the report. And that's just a problem with companies in general. Why is it when companies make more money, the first response is to cut wages of the employees? In 2016, Disneyland generated more than $3 billion in revenue for the Walt Disney Company, up from $1.7 billion a decade earlier, the report found. I believe it. In fact, I think it'd probably be a lot more than $3 billion. The theme parks have become more expensive to visit in recent years, with ticket and annual passport prices for Disneyland and Disney California Adventure increasing virtually every year, most recently this month. Yeah, in fact, with that price hike, I've kind of told my significant other, let's enjoy Disneyland while we can, because I don't think we can renew these passes. Still, that hasn't seemed to hurt attendance, which grew from 20.6 million in 2006 to 27.2 million in 2016. As Disneyland profits and prices hit records high, Disneyland employees are falling farther behind, said Pete Trier, a professor of policy at Occidental College, who co-wrote the report. Disneyland wages aren't keeping up with rising rents in Southern California. Our survey found that homelessness and housing instability are so widespread that they have become a normal part of employees' lives at the park. And that's true, but that also ignores the fact, in Disney's case, I should mention, that none of the jobs in Southern California are really rising to meet these astronomical rent prices. That's probably going to force me out of Southern California in a couple of years if they continue in the direction that they are going. So, I don't think Disney should be solely responsible for meeting that. I think all the jobs need to start meeting it. Southern California is just way too expensive, and it just takes and doesn't give a whole lot back. But again, if anyone's in a position to meet those rising prices, Disney certainly can. Let's see here. Glenn Donna Shelvin, who has worked for the resort for nearly 30 years, is among the workers struggling to get by. A food and beverage concierge at the Disney e-ticket club. Hey, the e-ticket club. Shevlin says she works to give guests a magical experience. But away from the job, she can barely afford rent, food, and bills, often having to choose which one she can pay at the end of each month. I have been evicted twice. I work all day serving delicious food to people, yet I'm often hungry because I'm skipping meals, Shelvin said. At work, I'm a clean, happy person, but when I leave and get in my car, I become a sad, unhappy person who doesn't always know where they're going to sleep. And I have, by the way, when I was working there, talked to many of my fellow cast members who were in very similar situations, and I even had to go from one place to another because it just became really hard to live certain places. And thankfully, I found a place that was reasonably priced, and I've been there ever since, and he has only raised the rent on me once, which is quite remarkable, I think. Another employee, hair and makeup artist Rebecca Peterson, is homeless once again after recently living out of her car for more than 3 months. I love my job and I take great pride in working at Disney. I'm a licensed professional whose position requires years of experience, yet my wages are so low I often have to choose between food and a roof over my head. The survey, which was conducted this past October, was commissioned by 11 different unions representing various resort workers, including hairstylists, costumers, food service workers, candy makers, security guards, custodians, hotel workers, retail workers, ticket takers, musicians, puppeteers, singers, and dancers. A town hall meeting will be held to discuss the findings at the Sheraton Park Hotel in Anaheim on Wednesday. Now, and again, since the report was commissioned by a union, yes, it does have an agenda. But are Disney cast members paid way too little? Oh, heck yeah, they are. They are paid way, way too little. I mean, you go to the park, and here's the thing. You're a pleasant person, and I acknowledge you're probably very pleasant, but there are so many people who are not pleasant, and it is very stressful working at Disneyland, and, I mean, there's a reason they call it a show, because if you can't pretend to be happy in the face of some really nasty people sometimes, you will go crazy. And not only are you putting on a good face, but you're doing really hard work. So, I totally agree with the report. I think Disney should pay their cast members more, and they are in a position to do so. I mean, if they keep raising the rates, the ticket prices, then guess what? Some of that needs to come down to the cast members. The cast members are what's making the experience magical. Not the CEO, not the park manager. It's the cast members who are dealing with the people who are really stressed out. And unfortunately, the homelessness issue is a real problem. It is. It's not something that they're making up. I flirted with it once or twice while I worked there. You'd think working full-time at Disneyland with health benefits would have helped avoid that, but no, because Disneyland pays enough that if these were Sacramento prices, I would be living in luxury. But they're Southern California prices. And, you know, they're pretty close to poverty sometimes. And I will admit, I also have to point out that cast members do get yearly raises of 3%. And after so many years, that does start to add up. But you have to be there a long time to be getting any decent wage from Disneyland, and I think it's pretty sad that, you know, they celebrate their cast members by giving them pins and special memorabilia, but when you ask, well, can I make $2 more an hour, the answer is no, you can't. I mean, we're making more than $3 billion in pure profit. Most of the time it's probably more, and yet we can't give out like 0.1 billion to pay our cast members good. That, I think, is terrible. But what do you folks think? Do you think this report is accurate? Do you think it's just propaganda? I would love to know. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe. If you enjoy the videos I make, consider becoming a patron member for $1 a month. Every little bit helps. And as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.